Okay, we're back with part two. If you haven't seen part one of this video where we talk about workspace energetic, I highly recommend you go back and watch that toot suite ASAP and review what we went over there. Just to briefly summarize, we talked about, well, who I am and why I'm here. So if you're new, I'm a founder of Soul Sanctuary. I have lots of experience in corporate design, personal development, workplace strategy, and I help entrepreneurs and solopreneurs specifically transform their space in themselves. And I work with evidence-based design and trauma-informed approaches, blending strategy and soul and desire. So you don't just redesign a room, you create a sanctuary that heals and inspires and amplifies your gifts as a solo, sensitive, neurodivergent entrepreneur. So if you're ready for a space and business that grows with you, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Welcome and welcome back if you are not new. We went over the energy of your desk. We went over the felt experience of space. We went over things in space that can cause conflict that we should be aware of and try to design against. We talked about, I went on a little tangent about noise reduction, and that was fun. At least I thought that was fun. But why it's so important for us to really pay attention to the details of how noise absorption works and not just throw things up in space, because we've heard, and this is where, you really want to understand the process, maybe work with a designer or a decor and design coach like me, because there's a lot of research that goes into not just like the fact that something can be successful, for example, with noise reduction, but how you actually implement it so that it's as successful as possible and not just thrown into the space and you're not sure if it's going to like totally work or not, right? That's why this research is important. That's why evidence-based design and the continuation of it is important. And that's why it's important to work with people who know what the fuck they're doing, because then you avoid wasting a bunch of money, time, and frustration that you don't need. Okay. Talked about how spaces can be energetically off and misaligned, how that can impact leadership. We talked about the happy zone of activation versus overwhelm or collapse. We talked about a lot of other cool things. So I recommend you go back and watch it. Or watch or listen. We didn't go over any graphics, not any really important graphics in that presentation. So you could probably get away with listening to it and get the hello fluffer and get the needed information from it. For this part two, you're probably going to want to watch it because there's some key graphics in here that I don't want you to miss. Okay, so let's talk about practical strategies for energetic alignment. So some quick wins. Again, these are the kind of things that depending, they can cost the money, or they may not, depending on what your space looks like and how you want to execute it. But simple things like decluttering pathways, often not a super expensive thing. Even if you're working in big corporate, oftentimes it's usually just a decluttering process you get employees to partake in, like throwing out old documents and then paying a mover to move or remove extra storage and stuff. So declutter, and you can do that at home, right? Decluttering at home is going to look similar, right? You've got to go through your stuff, downsize all, the things that you don't need anymore, donate, chuck, whatever, recycle, whatever you're looking to do. Hello, Fluffer. She doesn't want to get down yet. Okay. Adjusting lighting. Now, again, that's one of those things that can be, more or less expensive depending on your setup. At home, it's probably a lot less expensive to adjust your lighting than if you're in a corporate setting, but it really depends. It really depends on how you're working. Quick ones, creating micro nooks. Now, this can be pretty simple. You do need to give up part of your space for it. And so if you're tight on real estate, this one can feel a little challenging. In which case you might create a micro nook by having some sort of convertible type of furniture instead of something that is more permanent. And you see stuff like that in like small apartments. And let me just make sure. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss recording. I don't know why. I just thought, you ever had that you ever had the experience like, oh, did I lock my car? Did I lock my house? I'm like, oh, did I start recording? I did. Okay, I'm fine. But I just wanted to double check that because I was feeling just a tad bit distracted with this little flubber. I didn't want to be distracted from that, from having to re-record this. That would not be fun. So yeah, if you've ever watched like tiny, ever seen inspiring Pinterest posts, videos, brief like TikTok or other application videos where people talk about, oh yeah, I've been able to maximize my small space by making things convertible, or this folds into that. And if you are looking to create a micro nook and you don't have a lot of extra real estate, let's say you live in a city or you just live in a small space and you're working from home, or if you work in a more corporate office type environment and you just do not have the extra space, or maybe you work in a retreat center, whatever it might be, if you have the availability to create a micro nook, something that's like, just gets a little space, maybe it's surrounded by some bookshelves or something. If you don't have the space to create that, you might want to look at how you could create a micro nook using some convertible furniture. And then the possibilities aren't endless, but you've got some good possibilities there. I just saw a video the other day of this young lady who has an apartment in New York City, and her thing was she wanted to save some money. She was paying a lot of money where she was living before. It wasn't as close to what she wanted to be next to. And so the tiny apartment that she's in now is like the size of a closet. Literally, it's the size of a closet. And so she uses height. And so if you've got height, you want to maximize that, right? She obviously can't have everything in the space that she'd like to, as far as tools and implements, clothes and stuff like that. And there's no bathroom. I'm guessing it must be a shared bathroom that she must use with other residents. But so she uses height, and she has like a severely decluttered space as well. So I, personally, I don't think that's an ideal space. It's really, really small. And maybe she's just there temporarily saving some money. Who knows what her goals are? But it's a great example, not necessarily for what, we don't want to over restrict ourselves if we don't have to, as far as space, because it's just not good for the human psyche. But if there's some tips in there and those kinds of videos that would indicate how you can create micro nooks in spaces that don't seem like they have a lot of space, like definitely take a look at those for inspiration, because they may help you if you are in a tiny spot. So quick wins, yep, noise buffers. So we talked about that. Now, quick wins on noise buffers, maybe, but again, we should be strategic, and you should watch that first video if you haven't already, because we talked a little bit about why it's not just important to have the noise buffering material, it's how you strategically set it up to buffer space. Because in if you place a noise buffer in some places, it might be useful, in some places it might be useless, or not very useful. So we want to be strategic about that too. Quick wins, grounding materials, biophilic materials that remind us of nature, do a couple of good things. They definitely support us in feeling grounded. They help us with scientifically proven that biophilic visuals and materials can support us with positive health outcomes. So we definitely, where possible, where feasible, we want to include natural materials, wood, clay, textiles, visuals, artwork, all very important. You don't have to be in nature to experience many of the positive benefits of viewing nature. Okay, so more practical strategies for energetic alignment. So some deeper energetic interventions. So we've gone now from the physical more to the energetic. Biophilic additions, we just talked a little bit about that. Having biophilic artwork has actually been proven to improve blood pressure readings, amongst other things. Layout redesign absolutely will change the energy of your space. Rituals and routines that reset relational energy. So it's not just the space, it's what the space is supporting. And so there's a mindset that goes along. Hi, big yawn. There's a mindset that goes along with a changing space, right? And so what's interesting about that, and I'll share another corporate story with you. In changing space, the most successful outcomes, in my experience, are ones where people are really supported throughout the process, right? If you're moving people, if you're changing what their environment is going to look like, not everyone's going to like that. Even if you believe that you're bringing in this like beautiful new environment, da 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 da, people are going to have to change the way they work. And not everyone is immediately on board with that. And in fact, I've seen people leave companies because they didn't like a new way of working that was implemented. They might be going from an office to an open space. They might be, going from an in-office to a hybrid. Believe it or not, some people don't like that. There's all kinds of changes that people, have to get adjusted to. And so it's a mindset shift, and it requires some coaching, and it requires, a process. When people move, you give them, the move tools, a pamphlet about what's changing, da 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 da. You need to do, in my experience, much more to make sure it's successful, so that people don't just feel like they're left hanging, that they're, left without instruction or support with the changes that are happening. So it is a mindset shift that leadership really needs to support, and it's a change management that needs to happen. So policy adjustments, when I talk about mindset shifts, that's, policy adjustments, but also support with those policy adjustments. It could be with, break rooms, culture, meeting culture, boundaries, spatial boundaries, etc. All kinds of things will need to change to reflect a new space design. So let's talk about a case study option here. I don't know why I put that there. So this is not actually a before and after. It's just a successful example versus an unsuccessful example. I should probably change my wording here. This looks like a draft. I didn't update this sheet. Sorry about that. But anyway, so there's like a successful example and an unsuccessful example. The first one is energetically misaligned. I'm about to show you that. So we're going to show some visuals. If you are, doing something where you're just listening, you might want to pause and take a look. We'll identify some of the problem. It'll demonstrate some of the problems I've identified. And it's something that needs energetic and spatial intervention, right? Resulting shifts in behavior, morale, and productivity as well, once this kind of space is changed. All right. I love my fluffer. She just got like one of your little hair fur things. Okay. So the next slide is, this is an example of an incoherent space. Yeah, dissonant, whatever you want to call it, misaligned. I personally wouldn't want to set foot in this building, let alone work in it. Okay, it looks dingy. The lighting is terrible. It just makes me want to crawl out of my skin. Let me know in the comments how this particular office vibe feels to you. And unfortunately, these types of offices do exist, have existed, desperately need an update. But yeah, you've got on the left-hand side, we have this like dark, dingy hallway with lots of doors, extremely dark, almost foreboding. Like I almost wonder if something's gonna like jump out of the corners at me. Jesus Christ. Then the middle one is a very messy, very cramped, very poorly lit shared office space. No panels in between the two people who use the space. It's just a table, a couple of chairs, and a very small, cramped, dimly lit space. There's no windows. I mean, it just looks awful. So yeah, I wouldn't want to sit there either. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments. How do you feel about this first example? And then of course to the right, there's, you have an office environment, but it's super poorly lit. Everything is gray. And I can't imagine being less inspired than an office like that. The colors, the textures, the lighting, all off, just totally off. Um, so that's, yeah, when we actually design for inclusivity, neurodivergence, and just a better environment, regardless of if you're sensitive or neurodivergent or not, it's going to look more like the following images that I'm about to show you. We've got sensory, and you might want to include sensory accommodations for people who've got special, special needs. Like one material might be fabulous to one person and just like absolutely repulsive to another. And we got to be respectful of that too. Quiet zones and refuge spaces, predictable pathways and nonverbal wayfinding, right? It might be visual anchors. It might be, helpful signage, text, or even icons that represent certain areas as well, stuff that you can put on a map. One of the things that I've done a few times on the job is actually create maps and guided tours for people who are new to a site, new to a role, or we're actually coming back from working remotely or working at a different job site so that they could get familiarized with the site if they wanted to do so on their own. And that people have found that extremely helpful. It's definitely one of those things that I think more people should do in onboarding and more companies as well for big corporate spaces, right? Like certainly your tour process is going to look a lot differently, if you work from home or a small office or something like that. But in big corporate settings, those tours are all really, really appreciated. So another thing would be layering stimulation intentionally, right? So we, again, striking that balance, go back to part one if you need to watch that. Or listen to that. We talked about the balance between overwhelm and collapse and how we want to be in the happy zone of activation where we're layering stimulation, but we're not overdoing it. And we're also, on the flip side, right, supporting nervous system safety. So again, that happy balance between stimulation and safety. Okay, so the next slide is going to include some images. Again, what a literal breath of fresh air. Let me know in the comments what you think about these spaces. Beautiful, right? I love the, for me, what's coming up is I'm loving the soft colors. I'm loving the biophilia. I'm loving the natural light coming in. I'm loving the access to outdoors, nature. It's got an airy feeling to it. And then of course you've got your focus zones and collaboration zones, but they don't feel like they're on top of each other. And they don't feel like they're from initial glance. Now I want to hear or experience the space in some way that would indicate, right, that there wasn't some sort of audio issue, because there still could be in a space like this. We have to watch for that kind of thing. But just from initial, like, I literally exhaled when I saw these. So I would love to hear, what is your experience of these images, and especially in contrast to these first ones we looked at. My God, what a difference, huh? What a difference. I feel loved in this space. I feel cared for and nurtured in this space. When I walk into a space like this, if I'm an employee, I'm looking at this space and I'm saying, this is a leadership that really cares about their employees, genuinely, not just their output, not just their productivity, but they care about me as a whole person. They care about my health. They care about how I'm experiencing the space and hopefully enjoying my time working in the space. So yeah. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. I personally, night and day difference. Oh, and by the way, I did not write this here, but these were generated by AI, FYI. Just some quick examples that I pulled up to demonstrate big differences. Yes, yes, yes. So let's talk a little bit about the bottom line, because that is important. If you are a leader, business owner, etc., the ROI, the return on investment of energetically intelligent workplaces. And we're not just talking about the financial ROI, although obviously that is important. The buck stops with you. We have improved retention and morale, right? So that's retention is good, especially because we know that it's just easier oftentimes, not always, but like it's from a training standpoint, an effort standpoint, and oftentimes a financial standpoint, it can be easier to retain great employees and grow them rather than having to constantly churn and train employees, new ones. So retention is great for a lot of different reasons. Increased productivity and creativity. Again, we talked a little bit about brainwave states in another episode. So what drives productivity and creativity is enhances, encourage, and drives productivity and creativity is oftentimes a really inspiring space. Again, that is nervous system safe, reduce conflict and burnout, stronger, which your employees will appreciate. And again, we want to retain those great employees too. So that's important for lots of reasons. Stronger brand presence and culture, and a workspace people actually want to be in. Including you. Hopefully you number one, and then everyone else as a aside to that, not an aside, but as an addition to that. So how to get started? If you are interested in bringing these kinds of wins and transformations to your workplace, whether that be in your home, smaller office, a retreat center, a corporate space, you can work with me. Hi, reach out. info@kdtt.com is where to find me. We do a workspace energy audit or a space energy audit if it's not, if it's a combination of things. Virtual walkthroughs, leadership, and if applicable, staff interviews, colleague interviews. Hey, if it's your family, it might be interviewing with your family. Energetic and spatial recommendations and an implementation roadmap so that I can support you in building the space that you love while you are fully invested in the process. So there's no surprises. One of the things that I felt really conflicted about, design shows are great. So much fun to watch, right? Always enjoy a good design show on like HGTV when I still had a TV. I haven't had a TV in a while because I just don't watch a lot of it. But one of the shows that I always felt conflicted about though was like the kinds of shows where someone's home is redesigned and they have like an idea of what they think they're telling the designer, but then they come home to something and it's like kind of a big surprise and there's a big reveal and you're like, oh god, I hope they like it. If they don't like it, this is gonna suck, right? And I know too, like there's some aspects of like, oh, it's just acting, like they already had the house done, this is just for TV, da 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 da. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But what I will say is this: one thing you can count on when working with me is that I'm going to teach you what I know that you want to know. You probably don't need or want to know everything that I know, or if you do, that's fine. I'll share everything you want to know that I know about design. But you're fully involved in the process. This is me and you co-creating a space together. So there's no surprises because you are creating this with my help. And so, and I can do drawings for you. I can do materials recommendations for you. I can do all kinds of design stuff for you if you want. But that doesn't have to be the case. I can teach you. I can do it for you to some extent, some things. But what I'm most interested in is working with people who want to be fully invested in the process because they understand that this is such a transformational process that why wouldn't they want to understand it? Why wouldn't they want to understand inside and out how a space is transforming them and why? Especially if you're the type of person who thinks they're going to repeat this process throughout the organization, throughout their company. Maybe it's running retreats and you keep repeating the process over and over and over again. And so you need to kind of have a baseline understanding of what works and what doesn't. Those are the kind of people that I really love working with and desire to work with even more so on. So that's you. If you want to be a full partner in this transformation, not just experiencing it and wondering what's going on, but actually experiencing it and understanding it as fully as you desire to understand it, then I'm your girl. I want to teach you, I want to show you, and I want to partner with you if this is in alignment to bring you and your space to the place that you want to be at, to use your space as a partner, to use your space as a place to nourish you and your colleagues, your collaborators, etc., and also drive you and inspire you as well. Doing it together with absolutely no surprises and all in. So if that's you, reach out. Feel free to comment. It's probably better to email me because we'd have some discussions around how this works. But certainly leave me a comment if that's of interest. Let me know. Let me know if you have any other questions about anything specific. I would love to do a video on like specific case studies. So feel free to ask me for that. If I can do it, I absolutely will. But yeah, looking forward to talking to you if that's you. And looking forward to talking with you if you have a question too. So closing, let's talk about that. So we're claiming workplaces as environments that support human dignity, creativity, and thriving. That's where we are. That's our sweet spot. So if you want a workplace that feels as good as it functions, let's chat. Let's set up a time. Famous and wonderful designer Florence Knoll. If you feel like looking her up, you would find some interior and furniture design that might seem familiar. It's because she's designed some famous things that you might have seen out in the world. So I would encourage you to go Google her. But this quote is, "Good design is good business," and I thoroughly agree, which is why I just spoke to you at length about how I work. Good design is good business, and I want to be designing with you, not just for you. Okay. So with that, we're going to wrap up workplace energetics, and we'll look forward to it's like funny every time I run one of these episodes, like I've got 5 more ideas for design video content that I'm really excited about to share with you as we dive into the evidence-based design even more, and the science-based this and that, and trauma-informed, all the studies that have been done. It's one of the beautiful things. I love where the science meets the artistic, and it's not, it's important to be intuitive, but it's wonderful when the intuition meets the proof and it all comes together. So yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.